As the great man once said, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Hello, everyone, and Merry Christmas. I hope that you all are enjoying the holidays with your friends or family, enjoying your time off work or school or whatever. And this has been a very challenging year. I mean, you're probably like, yep, that's a massive understatement for sure. It definitely was for me as well. But I don't want to go into full details on that because, I mean, it's mostly personal. I don't want to get too much into that. Oh, and also, right before I start my thoughts on the film, I want to show you the full shirt. Oh, yes. It's amazing. Die Hard was directed by John McTiernan, coming out right after his success with Predator, and stars Bruce Willis as John McClane, a New York City police detective who visits Los Angeles on Christmas Eve to spend time with his family. So he goes to visit his wife at the Nakatomi Plaza where she works, and eventually gets taken over by terrorists led by Hans Gruber, played by the amazing Alan Rickman, rest in peace, and John McClane has to stop them. Now, right before I go over my overall thoughts on the film, I wanted to talk about my personal experience with this film, and for the most part, I didn't watch it when I was a kid. I think like around like when I was like, well, there was like a select few R-rated movies as a kid that my parents would let me watch. There would be like Terminator or Aliens, Blade, and a few horror films. I mean, there was like a few slashers like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, and I mean, it was mostly varied in like terms of content. But but for some reason, right around that time, Die Hard never really got my attention until I was like 15, right around the time after Die Hard 5 came out in 2013. It's just, thankfully I did not see Die Hard 5 in theaters because I just thought it would be like another big dumb action movie. But when a friend of mine, he recommended that I watch Die Hard. So when I was in the basement one time, I would skip over like a few channels. I think it was on like HBO or something like that. So I watched it all the way through, and I grew to love this movie. Die Hard is one of my all-time favorite films. It's one of my favorite action movies, and it's my favorite movie to watch around Christmas time. I mean, it's been debated for years on whether or not it's a Christmas movie. It's a Christmas movie for me. I don't care. I mean, a lot of people can agree or disagree with me on this. When it comes to my favorite Christmas films, it's definitely in my book. What makes Die Hard so memorable for me is its characters. You have one of the most likable protagonists ever in John McClane, because back in the 80s, in most action movies, you have like these big muscle-bound men who often, they look invincible and they only come out with just a flesh wound, and they have like a high body count. But McClane is the polar opposite of that. He's like the everyday man that the audience can relate to, because in the film, he gets shot, he is forced to walk barefoot on glass, and he gets the ever-living shit kicked out of him, and you just want to see him, like, get through this situation. I mean, you like the guy and you want him to survive, and that's kind of what I miss in most action films now these days. Modern day action movies, I love the John Wick films, and they're pretty awesome to watch, but they don't really, John Wick shows some sense of vulnerability, but John McClane, when you watch Die Hard from beginning to end, you see his vulnerability. He's not a superhero, he is a person. And I also love Bruce Willis's lines throughout the entire film. Of course, we get the famous yippee-ki-yay motherfucker, and one scene that always makes me laugh is when he's on the roof trying to get the police to come to Nakatomi, and the one lady's like, "Sorry, this channel is reserved for emergency calls only." And I love his response, "No fucking shit, lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?" It makes me laugh every single time I hear that line. When he, or when he goes up against Marco, who has a machine gun, and he's trying, and while John is hiding under a table, he's taking cover under a table, and Marco says, "Next time you have the chance to kill someone, don't hesitate." And John, of course, unloads on him, and he says, "Thanks for your advice." and and when Pal goes to check out the situation at Nakatomi, he finds out, like, and looks like everything is normal, because of course, I mean, you have like one terrorist posing as a security guard, and right when he's about to leave, McClane throws a dead body on Pal's car. He's like, "Ah, God damn it, Jesus H. Christ!" and the terrorists, I mean, they shoot at him, and McClane says, "Welcome to the party, pal." Oh, God. Some of McClane's lines are so hilarious. I mean, he's a smartass, but you love him for that. And of course, I have to talk about Hans Gruber, played by the amazing Alan Rickman. Rest in peace. This was one of your finest roles. He just... What he does with this performance, he pulls off one of the best performances as a villain ever in cinema. I mean, from his voice, from his demeanor to... I mean... And the thing is, he's not truly pure evil, because he shows a bit of sympathy to the hostages. And even when Holly, John's wife, says that they have a pregnant woman and they need a couch, so she... I mean, because... I mean, laying down there on a rock, when just sitting there doing nothing, it's not really doing the baby any good. And I like how he's like, "No, we won't let her go into an office where there's a sofa." He doesn't say that, but he's like, "No, but I'll have a sofa set up for you." And I mean, this is the kind of guy you love to hate, and every single line of dialogue given by this guy, and when he's intimidating Takagi by trying to get the code from him, "I'm going to count to 3. There will not be a 4. Give me the code. 1, 2, 3. I don't know it, I'm telling you. Get out of Tokyo, and that's a gentleman. I'm telling you, you're just gonna have to kill me." Okay. We'll do it the hard way. And he's honestly the best villain in the entire franchise. So their goal is to steal $640 million in negotiable bearer bonds, which is locked up in a vault. And what they didn't expect is a New York cop who just showed up in the wrong place at the wrong time. And, of course, I mean, he's going to make things difficult for them. And I even like how Ellis straight up points this out. Let's go over the terms. You're here in a hostile takeover, you grab us for some green meal, but you didn't expect some poison pill was going to be running around the building. Am I right? And Ellis is a bit of a dickhead, honestly. Another thing in this film that I like is the relationship between McClane and Sergeant Al Powell, played by Reginald VelJohnson. He gives an amazing performance in this film, and I think is a very underrated actor. And despite the fact that they don't really come face to face until like the very end of the film, but the exchanges of dialogue that they have is just... It's just amazing, especially when they talk about their kids. When McClane's like, "How many kids you got, Al?" And Pal's like, "Well, as a matter of fact, my wife is working on our first. How about you, cowboy? You got any kids back on your ranch?" And McClane's like, "Yeah, 2. Sure hope that I live long enough to see them roll around the jungle gym with Al Jr. someday." And Pal's like, "Well, now that's a date, but you're gonna have to bring ice cream." It's just so amazing. But But there's this one disturbing moment, but it's also heartbreaking as well when we see McClane pulling glass out of his foot, and he's talking to Powell on the radio, and Powell mentions that he had an accident, and he says that he shot a kid who was 13, and he thought he had a gun, and he has regretted ever since with that. He regretted making that mistake ever since, and couldn't bring himself to draw his gun on anybody again, which will come into play later and near the end when he eventually is forced to kill Carl, and he eventually redeems himself by killing one of the bad guys, and it's a kind of satisfying arc, I would have to say. But one scene that also demonstrates McClane's vulnerability is after he pulls the glass out of his foot, he has this feeling that he might possibly die, and he tells Pal to find his wife and tell him to say that he was sorry for not being a very good husband, and I like Pal's response. He's like, "Yeah, I got that, man, but you can tell her that yourself. You just watch your ass and you'll make it out of there. You hear me?" And then when we get to the finale, when McClane discovers that the terrorists have been planting C4 under the roof, he's like, "Jesus, Mary, Mother of God," and he tries to warn Pal and the cops, but he eventually has to fight Carl, and it's pretty bare knuckle, and he gets his ass handed to him for most of the fight. But of course, he comes out on top, very much like Indiana Jones in a way, because when you watch the first three Indiana Jones movies in particular, you have Indy fighting a big, humongous man, and for the most part, he fights the big guy, and eventually would end up getting his ass kicked for most of the fight. But sooner or later, he always comes out on top, and it's the same thing with John McClane, and because he's this close to dying, but he finds a way out of this difficult situation. And it's one of the few things that you like about this character. You did the guy, you want him to survive. Because he's in a pretty fucked up situation, but you just want this guy to survive. And when it comes to McClane's final face-off with Hans Gruber, he's a complete mess. He's all bloodied and everything. And when he takes his wife hostage, Hans forces McClane to surrender his machine gun, but he's unaware that he has his Beretta taped to his back, and he shoots Hans. And I always love the line, "Happy trails, Hans." And then we get the Hans Gruber's infamous death, which I can guarantee has been talked about to death by film critics across the world. And apparently, Alan Rickman did this stunt himself. Because that look of fear on his face, that is for real. Because, apparently he was gonna drop hundreds of feet down, and the look of an expression of fear on his face, that is for real. It's just like, holy shit. That would have been my face if I was in his situation, but he was a truly dedicated actor, and of course I have to mention before I go any further how amazing Alan Rickman was in the Harry Potter films as Severus Snape. One of his best roles, right next to Hans Gruber in Die Hard. And as a kid, that's how what I'm mostly known Alan Rickman as, and as Professor Snape in the Harry Potter movies. It wasn't really until the first time I watched Die Hard, when he first popped up on camera, I'm like, is that Professor Snape? And I'm like, holy shit, it is! It is Professor Snape! And that was my reaction, I swear. I don't really have much of a flaw with this film. The performances all around, they're amazing, especially with Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman. They're just amazing in this film. The action sequences are phenomenal. They're just amazing to watch, especially the famous rooftop explosion when it's just now that is how you make an epic explosion for an action film. And the story, it's pretty simple, and simple is fine when it comes to certain action films. And having it take place on Christmas Eve, I think, was a really good choice. And John McTiernan's direction was also amazing. He knows how to make amazing action films. He did Predator, he did Die Hard, The Hunt for Red October, and of course Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is actually my favorite Die Hard sequel. And it's really the only Die Hard sequel I ever even bothered to watch. Sure, I mean, I do like bits of like Die Hard 4, and Die Hard 2 I don't really care that much for, and of course I never watched Die Hard 5 because that movie does not exist. But not only is this an amazing action film and also a really great action film to watch during Christmas, it's just a fucking blast. I'm gonna give Die Hard an A+. Did you expect anything else? I hope you all have enjoyed the holidays, and I meant to review like a select few superhero movies leading up to Wonder Woman 1984, which I had not watched yet on HBO Max, mostly because I wanted to finish this review for Die Hard. But first, I wanted to review the first one as well as Wonder Woman 1984 back to back, and along with a few other superhero movies. I just hope I have enough time to do that, but I'm really excited to do that. But yes, thank you so much as always for watching, and I'm looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new movies, of course, you know where to find me. And Merry Christmas.